So welcome to the 19th Century Charitable Association in Oak Park, where it is our vision to be a dynamic cultural center for community learning. My name is Alice Rose, and I'm on the Art Program Committee, and I'm responsible for today's presentation. Today's program is part of our Japanese Themester, a special series designed to enhance your understanding of the many facets of Japanese culture and the contributions that Japan and Japanese Americans have made to enrich our world. And I just want to take a quick moment to thank Marianne Perusnik, who got this grant from Toshiba for us, which is why we've been able to have these Japanese-themed programs, right? In addition to Toshiba, we also want to thank sponsors Vanita Philbrick and Pat Cannon, who contributed towards the program. Today's presentation is on contemporary Japanese art. Our speaker is Janice Katz, the Roger L. Weston Curator of Japanese Art at the Art Institute of Chicago. She received her PhD from Princeton University in Japanese art and archaeology. Whoa. She's been at the Art Institute for over 20 years, where she coordinates those quarterly exhibitions of Japanese prints that are in the gallery right off of the Michigan Avenue entrance when you go in, right? Her other research focused on paintings from the Edo period, 1615 to 1868, and the history of art collecting in Japan. Her special exhibitions and publishing include Japanese paintings in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, Beyond Golden Clouds, Japanese screens from the Art Institute of Chicago and the St. Louis Museum, and Radical Clay, which you'll hear more about today, Contemporary Women Artists from Japan in 2003. Please join me in welcoming Janice.
Thank you so much, Alice Rose, for the invitation to speak here today on one of my favorite topics, contemporary Japanese art. And thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I know that it's a holiday, which is great, and we have a few guests with us, so that's also good. It's a beautiful day, so we'll have a good talk, and then we'll all go outside and enjoy the weather. So, as Alice Rose said, today I'm going to focus on the exhibition Radical Clay, contemporary women ceramic artists from Japan, that some of you may have seen at the Art Institute. And it started at the end of 2023, and it was on for the first half of 2024, and it is still touring around. It is now at the Phoenix Art Museum through September 13th, and then it's going to be in Dallas in the fall of this year. And I will focus my remarks today on this exhibition. And then I'll also talk about some important upcoming exhibitions, new acquisitions, and ongoing permanent displays of contemporary Japanese art that you can see at the Art Institute a bit closer to home. So while contemporary ceramics are not my main focus within Japanese art, when I was presented with the opportunity to do this exhibition, I quickly realized that this would align not only with what the Art Institute has been doing for decades, that is, bring the newest wave of contemporary Japanese ceramics to an American audience, but also that it was the right time to focus on women artists, as their work continues to fulfill its potential as cutting-edge contemporary art. When the exhibition was up in Chicago, I was doing interviews with a lot of local press, and one of the questions I would often get is, what do you want people to walk away with? What's the one point you want people to walk away with after they see the exhibition? And I said, I want them to recognize these women as cutting-edge contemporary artists in the full sense. So that was a really important thing for me. So there have been shows of women artists before. Not many, but they have been done, and they've been done well. So what was different about this presentation? First of all, the Art Institute had a solid history of being at the forefront of contemporary art, and in particular, Japanese contemporary art, as I'll explain in a minute. Also, as a museum showcasing artwork from around the globe, we situated these artist creations to foster a dialogue with contemporary art that we had from around the world. And as a group, these artists, these women, had a vision beyond what others were doing in the field. They are far less interested in and bound by tradition than many contemporary ceramic artists or contemporary artists at work today in Japan. And this can perhaps be said to be a result of their training, which many of them have graduated from prestigious art academies, or they've trained abroad. They were typically not apprentices at established kilns, ceramic kilns. And this ability that they have to innovate, to invent new ways of working with clay and glaze, and the skill of each artist to carve out their own process and their own strength is what makes these works so awe-inspiring and unusual. And when you think about Japanese ceramics, I bet nothing, unless you saw the show, of course, nothing like, these creations come to mind. Historically, women have largely been kept apart from the creative process of ceramics, with limited access to kilns. And when they are involved, they usually have jobs that are tangential to the creation of the works of art, such as preparing the clay or preparing the glazes. There are exceptions, but there are few. So while long a center for contemporary Japanese art, the Art Institute was typical among comparable institutions in that we rarely had the opportunity or really the intention to include women artists within the contemporary exhibitions and acquisitions. And in the 1950s and 60s, exhibitions of the work of contemporary ceramic artists were held at the museum. I mean, the very definition of contemporary art is that it dates from 1950 and later. So really, very early on had these exhibitions of contemporary ceramics. And these featured male artists working in traditional mode. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that there are contemporary artists who are working in what we call tradition-based contemporary art, which is that they take older ceramic wares that are well known, older shapes, older kinds of clay that has been used traditionally in Japan from certain regions, very famous, certain glazes that have become really famous, and then they reinvent them or tweak them, for the modern age. And there's still works that tend to be practical, like plates and bowls, teacups, things like that, and they're absolutely wonderful. But that's the kind of contemporary Japanese art that we were featuring in these ceramic shows in the 50s and 60s. Even into the 1980s, however, women were absent from these presentations. There was a large traveling exhibition of contemporary makers from Japan, the Living National Treasures of Japan exhibition, that was held at the Art Institute in 1983. This featured no women at all, highlighting the exclusionary nature of the government-sponsored Living National Treasure designation process. Is everyone familiar with this Living National Treasure designation in Japan? This is when certain living masters of their craft, usually after they reach the age of 60 and they're very well established for a certain style, a certain look to their work, they are designated as living national treasures. And still today, there are no women who are living national treasures in the field of ceramics, believe it or not. Yes, there is one woman who I think, would be a fantastic candidate. She's just kind of reaching, that age, that era where she might be considered. So maybe in the next few years. The criteria, though, for selecting a living national treasure, it favors artists who've been trained in traditional methods through an apprentice system. and that apprentice system, as I said, was largely closed to women. So in Japan, there have actually been decades of activity. By the time we got up to that, Living National Treasure show in the 1980s, there had been decades of activity by women ceramic artists. There's this Japanese organization that was started by women artists that was called the Joryu Toge, Women's Association of Ceramic Art. And it actually formed in 1957, specifically because women realized that, they weren't getting into the major shows, they weren't getting into the government-sponsored exhibitions, their work was not being seen at the major museums, and so they formed their own organization where they could put on their own exhibitions and promote them themselves. And this was done not just with ceramics, but with many other kinds of artwork in the time. And in 1957, that organization was spearheaded by Tsuboi Asuka, who I have up here on the screen. And that's an artist who we included in the Radical Clay exhibition. And now that organization that I mentioned, the Women's Ceramic Organization, it is still holding annual exhibitions. They're on their probably 57th exhibition by now. It's pretty incredible. And also in the 1980s, there was actually a group that came to be known as the Supergirls, the Cho Shoujo. They were creating these large installation works that were garnering a lot of attention. And that's a group that included this artist, Tashima Etsuko. And she's also featured in Radical Clay. Here I'm showing you a more recent work by her. In the 1980s, however, the type of Japanese ceramics that were displayed in American museums and the avant-garde work that these women artists were doing were completely far apart. What you could see in an American museum, what you could see in Japan in terms of these avant-garde women artists, worlds apart. So with this exhibition, we were addressing that gap. I can't talk about every one, although I'd like to talk about every one of the 36 artists that were in the exhibition. Each one so worthy of their own exhibition, but let me highlight just a few. And along the way, I'd like to point out how each of them exemplifies certain characteristics, certain threads that repeat, and these threads that connect these group of artists together. And I'll also show you aspects of their work that you can't see in the exhibition. So in creating this show, it was very important to have the artists speak for themselves. So if you go see the exhibition in Phoenix or in Dallas, you'll notice that there are a lot of quotes by the artists on the labels, and we wanted that to be a distinct feature of the exhibition. I don't know what the labels are like in Phoenix or what they're going to be like in Dallas, but in the Chicago presentation, we featured a lot of quotes, and I do believe they're reusing our labels, and so that was a really important aspect for us. So let's start with this artist, Mishima Kimiyo. And although she is very unique in the way she entered the ceramics field, she was one of the earliest and most successful to do so. There is a wonderful essay by Hollis Goodall, who recently retired from the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, in the exhibition catalog. We're on our third printing of the catalog, so there's plenty of catalogs available if you're wondering. But Hollis did this wonderful essay devoted entirely to this artist in the catalog. Mishima's work focuses on garbage. The variety of things that have been thrown away by people in the most developed societies, particularly newspapers or other items with text. So here you can see a larger-than-life garbage can on the right, filled with, because you can see she's right next to it, but it's larger than life, filled with crumpled newspapers. All of this is ceramic. And this work now stands in Japan Center for Contemporary Art, the island museum of Naoshima. I don't know if you have had the chance or will have the chance to visit Japan, but Naoshima is an island in the inland sea, the Seto Naikai, Japan's Seto Inland Sea, and it's basically a museum, outdoor museum on an island. And also there are plenty of indoor museums there as well, but her work is installed outside. So she was affiliated with these artists who were primarily painters when she was younger. And these artists are called the Gutai movement. You may have heard about that painting movement. She was affiliated with that movement, as was her husband. And it was a post-war movement across media that emphasized movement and process. So creating paintings, out of action, doing a performance and then creating a painting from that. The Art Institute actually acquired this collage by Mishima Kimiyo as part of its focus on this group, this Gutai group, in 2017. And this was before the current ceramic show, before our radical clay show was conceived, but it's great to have this collage by her in our collection, and it was on view during the exhibition. And you can see bits of newspaper in this mixed media work from 1965, and that is one link to her later work in ceramics. In radical clay, we have two works by Mishima, showcasing her signature method of silk screening text and images onto clay to create these lifelike representations of trash. And this is a technique that she began in 1971. I'm sure you were wondering, how does she get the text and the images onto the clay? It is silk screened. It's a really fascinating process that she pioneered herself. You can't just take any clay. You have to have a certain kind of inclusions in the clay that give it a strong but a pliable surface. Of course, she rolls out the clay really, really thinly to get these slabs. She does the silk screening. The clay has to have dried to the right level to take the pigment, and then she manipulates these slabs and folds them. And in the case of the beer box, inserts them into the beer box. All of this while the clay is still pliable without smudging the surface. I mean, it's just technically absolutely amazing. She was drawn to the brittle nature of ceramics to create her sculptures of trash being transient, and ceramics also being transient in a way because they're so fragile. So the wadded French newspaper work that you see on the left from 1981 is actually readable. It contains articles about the increased use of nuclear energy, among other things, and it's like a diary of a particular day and time. One sheet of newspaper was added to the front of the clay slab that she was using, and there's also the same sheet of newspaper on the back. And then after it's folded, you can try and read it, from any surface that you possibly can. But you can see that it's actually the same text that's on both sides of the clay slab before it was crumpled. The larger work from 2007 on the right is a smashed cardboard box of beer with newspaper spilling out of it. All the surfaces are covered with text and information. And for years, her work suffered from being uncategorizable. Is it ceramics? Is it sculpture? Is she a potter? Is she not a potter? It's interesting, and she said that only recently, particularly since 2015, has she had a steady income. Because her work was often not included in exhibitions of ceramics because nobody really knew what to make of these things. Unfortunately, Mishima herself passed away while we had the exhibition on in Chicago. Another major artist represented by two works in the exhibition is Katsumata Chieko. Her intensely colored large pumpkins evoke life and sensuousness, but also danger. As you can see in the one on the right, it's kind of got this yawning, red-tinged mouth, you know. So it's nature, but it's not placid, beautiful, peaceful nature. Her interest in nature, also the gruesome side of nature, is something that you see very much at play in the work of many artists in the exhibition, especially the younger generation of artists, and I'll feature some of those a bit later on. So Katsumata Chieko herself studied and worked almost entirely in France in the 1970s, and then moved back to Japan towards the end of that decade when she was in her 50s. Her vegetal works are hand-built using a kind of clay that's very well known in Japan called shigaraki. And like many of the artists in the exhibition, it's her deft handling of the materials and these pioneering techniques that she uses that give them their singular appearance. She applies her colors through a thin piece of cloth. And then you could see that very much on the left, and I'll show you a detail here. And the mottled, soft-looking surface that she gets is the result of many firings of the clay, and then sanding it and applying another layer of color and firing it again. Her works are both fascinating in form, color, texture, and concept. Another artist whose work is very much about the kind of surface that only she can create is Kishi Eiko. In this work of 2017, we see her signature technique of using different colored clay and inlaying it into the base clay. And in Japanese, that's called saiseki zogan. And this is a technique of her own invention, and she uses it on these geometric sculptural forms. She is, as you might guess, inspired by textiles, and in a way, she's creating her own textiles, her own kind of pattern cloth in clay. Actually, you can go through the exhibition, and if you have textiles on the brain, you kind of see cloth and you see textiles in a lot of these works. Let me just quote Joe Earle's description of her technique that we have in our catalog, because he does such a wonderful job of explaining it. He says, "She kneads together more than a dozen multicolored clays and uses them to build a faceted, dynamic, geometric form that, when cut, reveal numerous hidden lines of contrasting hues, primarily pale blue. While the body is still damp, she striates and digs into the surface of the clay with knives and needles, making thousands of small holes that she fills with colored slip, semi-liquid clay, before spraying on a thin, transparent glaze prior to firing." Okay, that's a lot. Let's watch a video, and hopefully some of it will become clear, but it also will probably lead to some more questions as well.
土は信楽の土を使っています。
So she's talking about the kind of clay that she uses. She uses that shigaraki clay that I mentioned before. And she takes all those bits of different color and she kneads them into a base of white clay. She has as many as 10 different colored clays that she uses.
土で作品を作るときに形のほかに質感だとか肌合いだとかで色合いやとか文様を作り出すことができるのでそのためにはこの
She thinks about the shape of her work in order to really bring out, the surface. And so she likes her works to have kind of a tactile presence and also to have kind of a depth. And so her forms are very geometric, but it's the surface that, really together with the form that brings her ideas alive.
だいたいイメージで形が浮かんでそれをこうミニチュアルにして
She's talking about her series of works that are based on No plays. Do you know the performing arts, the theater of No? Yeah. And so they're very abstract. You can sometimes see the costumes that the No performers wear in her shapes. And so she has a series that is based on No. Very abstracted, though. She's not close to being done yet. So she does these striations. And then she takes a stylus, you can see, and she actually goes around the contours of these different colored bits of clay that she's inlaid. And so she's really happy if you can see her work as something that's colorful and vibrant and varied, and that you really get close and see the surface and see the texture and the depth. All right. Did you like her different footwear that she was wearing in order to, yeah, that was pretty great. One of the most radical creations, I think, in radical clay is this work, which is entitled Liberation by the artist Konno Tomoko. And she creates complex sculptures that look like oversized vegetation, or in this case, a plant creature that appears as if it's going to get up and walk away. It sits on just a few points, its leaves or its feet. And this had to be assembled on site. Thankfully, we had very detailed instructions and steady hands, but it came in about, I want to say, 9 pieces, and they were labeled as to where they went, where to insert each of these leaves, but that didn't tell you what order to put them in, and so I was hoping for a video, which we didn't get. So we kind of had to figure out how to balance the piece and put it together at the same time. And it was, I don't think I took a breath the entire time. So it is using marbleized clay in some of the parts. This is a technique that's called in Japanese nerikomi, and it forms some of this complexity. I don't know if you can see in the slide, but there's areas of marbleized clay that use white and black colored clay and gray, and then it's all kind of kneaded together. But then, you also have these tendrils that are coming out, and within each tendril is these little spikes, tiny little needles that are on there. These are extremely, extremely thin. And you just look at them and they're going to break off. I mean, it was pretty frightening. And this artist she currently lives and has spent a lot of her time in Bali, in Indonesia. And it would be understandable to think that this environment had an enormous impact on her work. This piece in particular was commissioned for the exhibition by the collectors who were behind the show, the Horvitzes. And we thought that once the piece was finished, its title would be Creature, because that's the title she's used for so many of her other pieces. So we did the first pass, the first galley of the catalog. We had this named Creature. And I said, we better check this before we publish. So I contacted the artist, and she said, no, this piece is not called Creature, it's called Liberation. And I thought, okay, be really interesting to ask her why this is called Liberation. But the best sense I got was that, because she wasn't able to visit us, unfortunately, in Chicago, was that it represented some part of her, that had gotten out and, was kind of out there in the world, a part that she usually doesn't express. So it's pretty interesting, but I do hope I can meet her someday and really ask her what she meant by calling this work Liberation. Here are a few more examples. Here's her and a few more examples of her works. The piece that is in Radical Clay is one of the largest that she's ever done. Her works tend to be smaller, again, perhaps because they're fragile and they do require very, very careful assembling. Yet another artist who trained abroad is Hosono Hitomi. Her works have established her among the global ceramic movements and put her work in international exhibitions more than any other artist in Radical Clay. She lives in London and finds her botanical inspiration during her walks. By meticulously shaping and grouping additions to a clay base, she recreates what looks like a dense covering on a forest floor. And she began exploring molding techniques, because she molds each of these leaves, as you'll see, creates the mold and then, uses that to create these porcelain leaves. She began exploring her molding techniques while she was at Wedgwood. She spent some time as an artist in residence at Wedgwood. So let's watch this 5-minute video and see exactly how she does it.
Nature is a very important part of my life. I am interested in microscopic detail of plants. By looking very closely, I found really beautiful details which I can use for my work. My name is Hitomi Hosono. I am a ceramic artist working in London. I was looking at a massive hawthorn tree in Britain. It was really massive, but have a tiny flowers. I thought it's beautiful, and this coexistence of a small, delicate element and also big scale of the tree is wonderful, I thought. I wish to express this feeling with a porcelain piece. I really love to make something which is essentially from us. When bag of clay arrive in studio, it's lifeless. But there is excitement going through the process. The clay starts taking its shape, and that is really exciting for me. Making something porcelain is frustrating if we don't know how to handle it. Porcelain is a very sensitive and delicate material, and if I rush, the porcelain might crack. But once we get the hang of it, it could be very therapeutic. Every day, sometimes could be repetitive, but it's like the therapeutic and meditative. As I touch the material, more memory comes back through hand. And I remember in Gifu Prefecture in Japan, there are lots of rice fields and hot summer night, thousands of frogs singing, and also the sound of rustling rice leaves fill the air. When I'm working in porcelain, this beautiful sound, I hear as if I was in Japan. It might take 1 month to complete one sprig model. Afterwards, I made negative mold. Then I put the porcelain clay inside of the mold, made 1,000 leaves from it, and then carve finer detail with modified dentist tools. I get a thrown piece from potter's wheel, then I apply these leaves on the shape. Almost looks like the leaves obscuring the branches. Then I dry very slowly, sometimes takes 6-7 months. And then some of the vessels I gill inside with fine gold leaf. Then it's finished. Sometimes whole process takes 1.5 years. This needs patience. So I made this quietly at the studio. Basically, this piece audience was only me for 2 years. But now the piece could be seen by a lot of people in TEFAF. I feel really grateful and excited. We Japanese have this phrase, seishin ga yadoru. Seishin means spirit, yadoru means home. I believe each plant, each tree, flowers have a seishin, almost like us. They can think, they can feel. So when I'm making the porcelain piece inspired by nature, I feel this spirit seishin exists in my piece. So this way, I also have this respect to the piece. That's the attitude I have to the nature. 精神が宿る。
It was such an honor to have her work in the exhibition, and she also visited us and was part of an artist panel that we had during the show. It was really great to meet her. And next, one of the younger artists in the exhibition is also the most conceptual, and she likes to play with traditional subject matter. Her clay sculptures are often entitled, very simply, bag work. And they appear to be brightly colored textiles wrapped around vessels. Sometimes they look like textiles wrapped around boxes. And this points to the centuries-old Japanese practice of wrapping treasured items, usually ceramics like tea bowls, in cloth called furoshiki, and presenting a gift with this beautiful furoshiki cloth wrapped around the item. Tanaka creates the illusion of fabric by using sponges to smooth her forms that she builds from coils, applying clay slip with a brush or an airbrush, and adding several layers of glaze. And this work was the work that we had of hers in the exhibition, which I'm showing you here. It's definitely one of the favorites from the visitors that I kept hearing from. So the beauty of these forms, the soft-looking folds, within which the color is more saturated within the folds, so it really looks like it's, actually fabric. It's incredibly beautiful up close. I also love how the sculpture is representational of objects that are not clay. But it brings with it this idea of a precious concealed treasure that could be a ceramic. I mean, we don't know. With that, I think we've come kind of full circle from the garbage sculptures of Mishima Kimiyo, the very, illusionistic, very realistic garbage sculptures, to an artist of this younger generation also creating works in clay that defy the appearance of clay. But I do want to just talk about one last artist, because I can't stop talking about radical clay until I show you the work of the youngest artist in the exhibition, and her work graces the cover of the catalog as well. This is called Shura by Yamaguchi Mio. And we were deciding what to put on the cover of the catalog, and we were so impressed with the texture and the colors of this that and the scales, it looks like it's kind of an underwater rock with scales on it, barnacles and things, and it almost looks like it has some kind of underwater slime or moss on it as well. And anyway, we were fascinated, so we put a very close-up detail of it on the catalog cover. Regarding the name of Shura, Yamaguchi has explained that Shura is a Buddhist deity. In Japanese, the word is used to express intense emotions. And when I created this piece, I had big, strong emotions, and I wove those emotions into the clay. It's certainly one of the highlights of the exhibition for me. And that is the way she talks. She also visited us for the artist panel, and it was very interesting explaining to everyone just how personal, how much of herself she puts into these works. Absolutely incredible. So that is radical clay, but in the few minutes that I have remaining, I want to tell you about some things that we have coming up at the Art Institute in terms of exhibitions that you can actually come and see. So one upcoming exhibition that we have, starting in April, focuses on the work of a print artist, Hamanishi Katsunori. And he has been devoted to producing a specific kind of print. It's a mezzotint. And this uses different shades of gray. So you start out by burnishing your plate. This is not traditional woodblock printing at all. You start out by burnishing your plate, and that creates this velvety black background. And then as you carve or you use a stylus to create any kind of incisions into that surface, the deeper the incision, the whiter the color comes out. So it's kind of a negative process, and it is very, very difficult to achieve. And his early work, which I'm showing you on the left, features these really interesting models that are out of metal or wood or rope that he has built in his studio, these three-dimensional models that he then renders in mezzotint. And we're also featuring his series about Chicago as well, that show outdoor sculptures that are very well known in Chicago. And then in the last several years, he's devoted more of his work to traditional subjects. And here I'm showing you a New Year's decoration on the right. And he's also used a lot more color in his work as well. And this is a new acquisition. We received a gift of 4 very large prints from the artist, 4 for 4 seasons. This particular one features spider lilies, and they are enormous. We had to get new frames to feature these in the gallery, so I hope you come and see them. They're absolutely beautiful. And also on view in the Art Institute, although not in the Asian art galleries. This is in the modern wing, which is kind of a coup, right, for a Japanese ceramic artist. We just included the work of Kato Tomonari, and this is a very young artist, and this work is called Sitting. And it's amazing. You can see this dark gray slip with this raised white decoration at the points of contact between the forms. It gives it this kind of organic feeling. His works have gotten larger and larger over the years. It's freestanding. It's amazing that, he can create these things and they kind of stand up on, their own volition. And this will be on view through May in the modern wing. It is ceramic, like I said. We're also going to show several new acquisitions of bamboo, very sculptural works. I'm showing you pieces that have been in the museum for a little while, but we're adding to this display these new acquisitions, and we're going to have them in the what we call the Ando Gallery, the gallery designed by Ando Tadao, that's within the Arts of Asia galleries, and that will be in the fall. So I hope you come out and see that. I'm very excited for the new acquisitions that we'll be able to put on view. And then we have these two ceramic works that are on permanent view inside our Japanese galleries. On the left, we have the work of, he's an American artist who comes from a Japanese family. His name is Mizuno Mineo. And it's a ceramic work that's in the center of the largest gallery that we have for Japanese art. It has no glass over it, which was kind of disconcerting when we first put it on display, but so far so good. And you can get up really close and see the surface, and it has all these small Japanese characters written on the entire surface. Each of those characters is the same. It's the character in Japanese for zero or zero, and it refers to the kamikaze planes in World War II that had the nickname of Zero. His father was a kamikaze pilot, and sadly, passed away before he had a chance to meet his son, and so it is a very personal work for the artist. And we also have a piece by Sugitani Keizo, which is that very abstract sort of Isamu Noguchi looking piece on the right, which I'm very, very glad, which was a gift to us recently. I'm very glad to have that on view. And right now in our alcove area, we have a work by a paper artist. Her name is Ibe Kyoko, just outside of Kyoto, and she actually creates her own paper in the studio, adding bits of color, texture, and bits from old manuscripts, old books as well that were collected by her family, and she includes, all of that in her works. I visited her studio to see her make these. Really glad that we were able to acquire this pair in 2015, and so we have that currently on view, and that kind of shows our commitment in contemporary Japanese art to show works in new media. Right, this is paper. Hopefully we'll have some gifts of contemporary metal work soon. We have a contemporary lacquer piece. And so really want to branch out from ceramics as well. So with that, I'll end my presentation. I'm happy to take some questions.
The first artist you showed, Mishima, the garbage artist.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, I love those things. The crumpled up pieces of paper had Western letters on them. Is there a reason why she did that as opposed to Japanese characters?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like I said, she was part of this this movement, the Gutai movement, when she got started as an art student, and they were very internationally minded, and they knew that the work that they were creating could have a larger audience if they promoted themselves correctly, if they got into certain exhibitions. They were trying to align themselves with more international contemporary art movements. And so I think because of that, she has always considered how to make her works more accessible to people overall. Yeah, so that would be my guess, but I don't know specifically. That's a very good question, thank you. She did spend time in New York, and she did collect a lot of junk. When she was in New York, she loved how much garbage there was, but yeah.
So, can I ask a question? I'd like to ask about the scale of some of these pieces.
Yes.
Obviously, the garbage one was larger than life, but the liberation piece, how big was that?
I know because I held it as they were putting it together. I know exactly how big it was. Are there any other works that you were curious about the size? The yellow one is quite tall and quite heavy. I mean, it's almost solid clay. Yeah, so it was quite a tall work. I really hope you can see the show. It's really hard to get across a sense of dimension with the slides.
I might have missed this, but why weren't women allowed to work with clay? Was it too messy and unfeminine or something, or why?
Yeah, I mean, they had these kind of subordinate roles where usually it was a family business where, the wife or the daughter, if they wanted to help support the creation of this potter's work, they would support them by running the studio or by mixing the colors and doing all this work that's unseen but necessary, that needs to happen in order to support the main artist. But women had certain roles in society at large, which were mainly supporting roles. And it's really not until you get to the generation of artists who were working, pretty late in the 90s and in the 2000s, where they said, I actually chose to be a ceramic artist as a woman so that I could work from home. And I could have my studio at home, and I could, be with my children and things like that. So it's interesting that it's gone from a world in which it was very difficult for a woman to break into to actually something that the young artist says very intentionally, I wanted to become a ceramic artist because that worked with my life. So it's fascinating.
Kyoto used to be a center of ceramics and
Yes.
ceramic creation.
Yes.
And I wondered if the women whose art you've talked about today are located in any geographic center, or are they just scattered?
Yeah, many artists choose to live outside the city so they can get some peace and quiet. But there are quite a few artists who are centered around Kyoto. Kyoto is a difficult place to really make your name as a ceramic artist for the reason that you mentioned. So the artists who've chosen to work in Kyoto have to contend with the audience for ceramics, the expectation of ceramic artists in Kyoto, and they really have to forge their own path. So many artists live in the greater kind of Kyoto area. There's also Gifu, which is closer to Kanazawa on the west side of Japan, where you have many artists working there, and that's a real center for ceramics. The same with Shigaraki, where the Shigaraki clay comes from. So it's kind of like the greater Kyoto area, like 1 or 2 hours outside of Kyoto for the most part. And many artists choose to stay in the area where they've gone to school. So there are great ceramic schools in Gifu and in Shigaraki and places like that. Yeah. Thank you so much.